Hey all. First of all, yes, I know the light is a little bit brighter than it normally is. That's by request from a couple of family members who wanted to see the hair in slightly better lighting. So I hope you could forgive me for doing this for just one episode, since I need to record this anyways. Today we will be talking about Partuition, which is better known as the Neelix Gets Jealous episode. And by Neelix gets jealous, I mean Neelix goes completely overboard psychopathic with his jealousy. It's kind of ridiculous, actually. Um, I don't even know what else to add to that. Now, I do have a couple notes about this episode. First of all, there is a couple problems at the very beginning of this episode that will crop up again in Threshold. Star Trek tends to do this thing where it tends to have a scene that is obviously artificial, but then make it feel obviously artificial as well. What I mean by that is if you could picture the director going to someone and saying, I want you to pretend, I want you to give me the performance of an actor. Okay, pretend you're acting. Pretend you're saying lines for a camera. You think you could do that for me? I get that impression from several scenes, especially in Voyager, especially in season 2, and the very first thing with Kes and Tom is a good example of that. I also have to say that when you're actively stalking your own girlfriend, you've already gone over the line. And that is one of the very first things we see Neelix doing in this episode. And one thing I do have to give credit. This teaser in this episode is actually very effective at getting across the point. This is a Neelix is jealous episode. And there's really no better way to do that than have him stalking his own devoted girlfriend in the teaser. One other point I want to make here. It has been often cited as a continuity error that during the simulation they actually are fighting Jem'Hadar attack ships. Now, just to set the record straight, that actually is not a continuity error. If you check the star dates and the release dates for when Caretaker came out as versus when they first encountered the Jem'Hadar, Caretaker was later, so it is entirely possible, given the events of those first few encounters with the Jem'Hadar, that they started adding those ships into their simulations rather quickly, I might add. So, no real surprise there, all things considered, and I just thought I'd mention that because I've heard that a lot. When I wrote my notes, I actually wrote down Neelix is jealous, the episode. I'm sorry, I hate to keep bashing in on this, but there's really is so little to add to that. Again, this is probably going to be a short review, and that's mostly because of this. But it's also partially because I've already talked about the Neelix is jealous issue. In fact, I talked about it in just the last episode. I have talked about it in every episode it's come up with. Now that it's finally come to a head, all I can say about it, in addition to what we've already seen, is two things, okay? One, thank God it finally ends in this episode. I can picture Ethan Phillips, the man who plays Neelix, actually doing like a little jig, as he was so happy that he doesn't have to act psychotically, stupidly jealous anymore. I mean, for God's sakes, man. The man is a good actor and he can pull off raging psychotic jealousy pretty well, but I can't imagine that was a pleasant thing to do, you know what I mean? The second thing I want to say is if you think I am joking about the psychotic part, if you think I'm just using that as a descriptor, then you have not seen this episode, for there is in fact a scene. Now I'm going to describe to you without verbosity, okay? Without flavor, without interpretation, all right? Tom and Harry have a scene, which I'll talk about in a minute, and go to 10 forward, or I'm sorry, to the mess hall, and they're like, oh, shoot, Kess is here. And, oh, okay, now we have to talk. And he's like, okay, look, we're going to have to sit away from Kess because we have to talk about business meetings and stuff like that. And I'll talk about that a bit more when I get to the Tom Paris side of this discussion. And then Harry's called away, and Tom is sitting with his back to Kess, and then Kess ends up leaving. And then Neelix comes over and says, "You subclass genius, look sitting together like two people with their backs together. Like you think that's gonna fool me? You know, I'm." And then he grabs Tom's plate of spaghetti of pasta, shoves it into his uniform, and then grabs him, and they start rolling around, pseudo fighting on the table as Neelix is shouting, "I'll kill you." Yeah, I'm not being hyperbolic when I call him psychotically jealous. It is stupid. Oh my goodness. Um, Now I want to let's talk about a couple of things here. Tom Paris's side of this episode is actually kind of interesting because I really liked the development of Tom's character in this episode, believe it or not. Even though this is Neelix is Jealous, the episode, the Tom Paris side of things I thought was really good, and for two big reasons. One, it is his character showing actual evolution, and two, there's a scene I'll mention towards the end where he really discusses what has happened with him, and in fact shows that his character has grown, and I really like that, and it really demonstrates a lot of the qualities I like about Tom Paris and why he's one of my favorite characters of the show. That being said, Tom Paris and Harry Kim and the actors that play them have always had a fairly good chemistry. There's a scene where Tom shows up and Harry is playing the clarinet. And of course, the first thing they do is make fun of Neelix's cooking because that's always funny. I'm sorry, I'm getting so pissed off at that stupid joke, and they just keep bringing it into everything. I can't get away from it. It's stalking me. And then they have this incredibly tepid, boring, bad conversation, which is incredibly poor written and just really, really trite dialogue that doesn't feel like a conversation at all. And there's like two lines in the whole thing between the two that actually feel like the characters are talking and actually feels like they're having that chemistry that they're known for. I just want to give some degree of credit to the writers for making two of the characters have the greatest chemistry and tend to act the best on screen together, and actually making them garbage because you have given them such terrible lines. I applaud you, whoever did this. I don't feel like looking it up because I don't care that much. I am amazed at this. You literally could just be like, all right, Eric Kim, Tom Paris, same scene, go. You could practically let the two ad-lib this kind of thing, but no, no, no. We've got to talk about stupid Chinese sayings that aren't. If it works, use it. As I mentioned back in Twisted, there's one other thing I meant to mention this first, so forgive me. Twisted ends with them getting this giant dump load of information in the thing. If you didn't watch my episode, you probably knew this was coming, but I have to comment on this because this is Voyager in a little nutshell, and it's some of the other Star Treks have had passing familiarity with continuity. TNG, for example, had this sort of pseudo continuity thing going on. It wasn't a serial, but it wasn't fully a periodical as well. It was not. It was kind of like halfway in between. It was this beautiful hybrid show. They did consequences did matter. Previous events were brought up. Things did change in the overall. It's just usually in any individual episode would not lead into the next, right? Voyager takes continuity and brings it out into the back and just beats it the crap out of it in a burlap sack because we don't want any of your stinking continuity here. Let me make this. I really want to emphasize this. Last episode, the second scene before the last episode, or I'm sorry, maybe it was the last scene. One of the last two scenes. We'll go and say the second scene, just to be nice. So the total time that passed here is there's a scene where they're like, oh my gosh, we've gotten all this wonderful data about this entire region, yay! Then there's the coda, and then there's the opening thing where we find out that Neelix is jealous. Next damn scene, boom, Chakotay and Janeway are talking about how they're so lost and have no idea what's in the area, and oh my god, we really need food supplies. It's a big deal, and we really need to find it because no messed up spatial alien has dropped any information on our databanks. No continuity. Continuity. I'm sorry. I'm in a bad mood. Probably don't look good. So. Janeway's an idiot. No, seriously though. There's a scene where the doctor reveals that he has worked on a cream rash thing in order to help with the problems on the planet they're going to in order to get some food from and some supplies, right? Now, the catch here is the reason the doctor is aware of this is because he has been eavesdropping through the comm systems, okay? Now, let us be fair. Just about anybody, myself included, would have some problems with being eavesdropped on. So I don't blame both Chakotay and Janeway, their reaction to please don't eavesdrop on us and just kind of feeling kind of creeped out by it. I understand that. That's not my problem. My problem is that Janeway's an idiot for not bringing the only medical officer on the entire ship in on their plans to land on a potentially unknown hostile planet. I don't know what else to say to that. That is such basic thing. That's kind of like saying make sure you open your garage door before you drive out of it. I mean, really, that is such a mundane, basic thing that you shouldn't even have to mention that. Bringing one of the chief medical officer, and indeed one of your officers in general, and your only medical officer. So we've got three reasons to bring him in on this about basically everything you do with regards to, oh, I don't know, leaving the ship at all ever is probably a good idea, and frankly, the kind of thing that wouldn't be that hard to do because it'd just be like, Doctor, we're going down to this planet, and here's this thing, here's our stats in it. I don't know. Okay, okay, Captain, I'll be looking at it. Thanks, Doctor. Boom, done. Doctor, we're going to be beaming over to this ship we've never encountered before. We've got the scans available for you. Can you tell us if it's going to be a hostile environment? Oh, hang on, Captain. Nope, you're good. Okay, thank you. This is not a big deal. Again, it's like just pushing the button and open the garage door. Janeway, you moron. One of the scenes well, there are three scenes I like about this episode. I'd like to talk about them last, if I may. They're not really next to each other, but I just want to end this on a kind of a positive note. So let's talk about another bad scene while we're on the subject. One of the things this era of Trek really started, and it's kind of the last half of TNG, basically up to the end of Enterprise, including several of the movies. One of the problems they've always had is solving problems through technobabble. Nowhere is this more aggravating than in space combat. I'm not even going to talk about the Voyager ship itself. Let me give you my worst example, and this may come up later. In the movie Generations, Star Trek 7, the Enterprise, a Galaxy-class, battle-proven cruiser, okay, is attacked by a completely out-of-date piece of junk bird of prey. That's not even the most recent model of bird of prey. It's the old one. Now, what do? They technobabble their way out. Really. Now, I'm not going to talk about that at length. I'm just using that to give you the most extreme example of what I'm talking about. This episode is another problem like that. We're facing an alien ship. Okay. Well, we can be clever or use tactics or actually use our brains or try to outthink the problem, but all of that is hard. So let's use a nonsense beam and the nonsense to make sure that we just shoot an anti-polar on blah 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 to disable their weapons at the right moment. Because that's what we do here on this show. We solve our problems with technobabble. And I'd like to add that in case I haven't made this clear before, I'm sure any of you watching this has seen the rest of my episodes with regards to Voyager. I don't necessarily have a problem with technobabble on the face of it. It is its extended and improper application, especially within this series and the next one, Enterprise, which I will not be looking at, by the way. If I do get arm twisted in that one, that's. Ugh. But anyway, seriously, it's the wrong usage thereof that really just drives me absolutely crazy. And we're only in season 2 of Voyager, and already it's been getting to me. If you understand what I mean. Already they've done it more than I think TNG has done in its entire 7-year run. And mind you, the latter chunks of TNG were pretty technobabble heavy. But no, this is Voyager. We wrote the book on technobabble. Let's talk about good scenes. There's a scene where Kes is discussing things with the Doctor about the whole jealousy thing and about how she has no idea what to do about it and how to act with it. I actually really liked that scene. First of all, we saw Ricardo performing as he should, a doctor and a hologram who does not understand the feelings and emotions attached to this sort of thing, does not understand that kind of strain, that kind of emotional pain that we fleshy creatures tend to feel, you know? And then we have Kes, someone who's never been through anything even like this. The very idea of cheating on or not even cheating on, the idea of splitting up with Neelix never occurred to her. That's the kind of mentality she has, and I do think that scene really gets across the two differing perspectives. And it's funny that Kes, the woman who has no experience, goes to the Doctor, the being that has no experience. But between the two, it kind of finds this middle ground. There's a later scene with her and Harry, which I'm only going to mention in passing, which I give halfway credit for being good. Because while Harry is just being directed to be the stupidest guy in the universe, which I don't place on Harriet Wong, I place on the director and the writers, Kes at least shows herself as being a person. You could just see the conflict on her face and on her tone and as she's moving and she's kind of fidgeting. She's so angry and she's so hurt and she's so scared and she's so sad and she's angry again and frustrated, and it just kind of bounces around there just like it would if this was actually happening. Definite props there. That was very well done. I liked that. Now, there is one scene, it's not even a scene, there's a very small period at which Tom and Neelix are in the cave and they're discussing survival techniques, right? And during this scene, Tom talks about how he only got a B minus in that class. And Neelix says, well, that's not as encouraging as I'd like. And Tom says, in the perfect tone, you'll forgive me, I can't emulate it right now, but he says it perfectly, with just the right amount of resignation and personal, just, I don't even want to talk about this kind of tone, you know? He says, yeah, my father taught that year. Beautiful. One line, and we learn so much right in that one line about the relationship between the two, about the way Tom thinks of his father, about the way his father probably thinks about him, you know. So much information is dispensed with that one line and the way it's presented. Beautifully done. Really, genuine props on this one. Obviously, we already knew something about Tom's father. He's mentioned him twice now. Once in the very first episode, and once in the Let's Go Just Commit Genocide in the name of the Prime Directive episode. His name I can't think of right now. But this was very good, very well done. I have to give it props where props is due. I also like the entire scene when Neelix finally apologizes to Tom and the two actually reach a degree of rapport. I really genuinely liked that scene. It was Ethan Phillips and I can't think of his name all of a sudden, the guy who plays Tom Paris. Both just acting off of each other. You could almost tell that some of that dialogue was either ad-libbed or just kind of rolled over, or you know what I mean? Because it actually does flow. It actually does kind of grow as a natural conversation. It really is two people just kind of bearing their souls to an extent to another, lying like, look, I'm sorry, you know. And the two of them really talking about that was awesome. And there's this one line Neelix has that I really enjoyed. I don't choose who Kess's friends are, but I do choose mine. And I liked that. It was almost worth sitting through this whole damn episode about stupidity and retardation. And you'll notice I haven't even talked about the enemy mind plot with the damn baby. I'm not even touching that. That's not worth my time. Really, it isn't. If I wanted to get into the biology of it, okay, I could. I don't want to. I'm not that. I am that much of a geek. I admit it. But I am also the kind of person who will say it's a fantasy. Go with it. I am. I mean, I do that in my own stories, for God's sake. Sometimes I'm just like, look, live with it. So, okay, let's not argue that. Let's not argue anything other than the fact that it was so hackneyed, cliche, unnecessary, pointless, and stupid. And let's move on. I admit this is one of the very... You'll notice I only do my then and now section every now and again. It's usually either when I remember it or when there's a change. I'm going to try and make it a rule from now on. I'm only going to mention this little now and then section when there's a change, which this is a good example of that. Did I enjoy the episode then? No. Did I enjoy the episode now? A lot more than I thought it would, despite the bile, despite the aggravation and rage I've been putting off. It wasn't as bad as I remembered it being. And when I got to that last scene I mentioned, I found myself actually sitting here, well, not here, but, upstairs, watching the thing and actually pausing in what I was doing at the time, which was form editing. And really leaning forward and being like, oh, because it actually caught my interest, it caught my attention. I really liked that. Now let's talk about my changes section, okay? I'm going to be a little bit brief about this and not go into as much detail as I usually do. It's because of my throat. I do apologize, but I don't think much detail is necessary in this version anyways, okay? As I mentioned before, I like to have breaks, in character breaks within an arc, but I also like to then, get back to it, if you follow me. So this is, again, following the overall arc. Kind of immediately following the arc. The array, the distortion array that they're in, this chunk of space with these gravitic problems, they're still in it. They haven't left it from Twisted. They have decided to keep going on. Any random bandits that come by, they can deal with, and the Terranok already know they're here. Obviously, they already knew they're here because, hey, they left a trap for them. So it's not like they're actually going to lose anything by continuing to go through here. At least they will be harder to find, right? So they're still going through this space. And they are having energy problems again. And I don't mean, again, as in, oh, energy problems. One of the things I've tried to emphasize in my series is that every now and again, they just kind of run out of energy, right? that does not make sense to. I mean, granted, I don't want it to be a huge deal, and in fact, in a period of time here, I don't have the episode list up or anything like that, but sometime in the future, there will come a point at which the energy problem will just kind of go away and never come up again. But for these early years, especially these first two, they get a supply of energy and they refill and they're good, and I don't mention it for a while until it gets to the point where they get down to here again. It's like, okay, we're kind of having trouble. Well, they're kind of having trouble. They're not out. They think they can get out of this place. Neelix thinks he can lead them to an outpost, but just in case, they do have the sensors actually turned up to full and they're scanning everything. And they pick up what looks like an energy reserve. Now, everyone on the ship at this point is extremely paranoid, and for good reason. If this could be very well, if they've already basically run into two traps, either set for them or people like them before. So they approach very cautiously, shields up, red alert, weapons ready, and they find an asteroid which for all intents and purposes looks like it's dead. As they start scanning it, they realize that it was only because their scanners are frankly very, very advanced that they were able to find this asteroid at all. Otherwise, it looks completely unremarkable. And when I say asteroid, by the way, I actually mean kind of comet is kind of where I'm going with. Just a random comet floating through here. Not going particularly fast. But as they scan it directly... As they scan it directly, they find out that there is a facility built into the place with an atmosphere in it, a breathable atmosphere. And that is the source of all the resources. Now, this is actually the first part of the story in a nutshell. I'm sorry, do forgive me. The first part of the story. Only a little bit ultimately, 10 minutes, 15, is dominated by this dilemma. It's very obvious that this place is a warehouse, and it's obvious that somebody went to a great deal of effort to keep it hidden by making it disinteresting. If not for their sensors, they wouldn't have even noticed this comet and would have just kept going. It's completely unremarkable. And so, do they have the right to become bandits, to become pirates? And obviously there's going to be some division about this. I don't think I'd have a whole crew thing. I've done that kind of thing before. It would just be Janeway, Chakotay, and the two of them hashing out their options on this matter until finally it reaches the point where Janeway is, staring at the thing, and finally, and again, this would be several minutes of discussion and debate as they think about their options. And there would be a cutaway at one point to the facility, and it would just show a very small part of the facility, one of the little panels, and the panel would just start kind of blinking like this, right? Cut to commercial. Finally, Janeway says, I don't want to actually hurt anyone. I don't want to injure anyone. For all we know, this could be a bandit raid spy, but at this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and make the call. We need those reserves, and if we could get them right now, cheaply and easily, I'll take the hit to my principles in order to keep my people alive. And that's the call I feel Janeway should make in this case, because ultimately pragmatism is slightly more important in the circumstances there are, in my opinion. Now, I know several of you out there will probably have a issue with that, and I don't blame you. That's kind of why I say this would be like a 10, 15-minute section of the show, because this shouldn't be a decision made lightly. It shouldn't be Janeway saying, take it all. They should actually debate this. They should actually talk about this. She should actually go over, logs from previous captains in dire situations, in dire straits, try to get some kind of guidance, and finally realize that it's just on her, that there's no one to help her, just like there's no one to help them, and ultimately that would help lead her to her decision. I have no one to help me, so I have to rely on myself, and therefore I'm going to make the call, whether it's the right call or not. And I would want to portray it as not the right call, not the morally correct call. Does that make any sense? Just the call that she has decided to make based on the circumstances. Next thing that would happen is they go over and they find out, surprise, it's a nursery. What it is these aliens who I gave a name when I was thinking about this. I don't remember right now. We're going to call them the Orosols. The Orosols are a people who have a a very specific life breeding cycle, and so they only have children, eggs actually, every so often. And as Neelix is going over, he'll recognize these, he'll identify these are Orosol eggs, blah blah blah. And, so does that mean they're food? No, I know the Orosol. They're decent people. I've met with them. I've traded with them before. That kind of a thing. And it is revealed that because of their life cycle and because of the volatile nature of this entire region of space in general, they basically put all these. Well, I'm sorry, it's assumed. They never actually say outright, but it's assumed that they put everything on this asteroid specifically to. I'm sorry, this comet specifically to keep it hidden, and then they come by whenever the eggs hatch and everything's good, right? One of the reasons for this need for secrecy is because their children need a great deal of food, supplies, and care when they are first born, when they first come out of the eggs. And as a result, they have a fairly large energy supply, as well as foods, rations, stocks, etc., on this comet. And that's what originally drew Voyager to here, you see? And that's why they have to keep it hidden, because that kind of wealth of resources will either have to be continuously defended, which is difficult, expensive, and costly, or it would have to be hidden, like it is here. You follow me? Now, as they look at this, Janeway's just sitting there, and she would just have this look of defeat on her face, because at this point there is no choice as far as she's concerned. She's not going to steal from this nursery. She's not going to steal from newborn babies. Basically, that's completely out of the question. And so she's realizing this, and she's realizing that she went all this way for nothing, and that they're just gonna have to keep going and live with it. So she's not pleased about the situation, but she's like, all right, whatever. As they're getting prepared to get the crew back, a ship comes out of warp and starts attacking them. Now, they of course raise shields and like, oh my god, and the people on the array get cut off, and on the comet get cut off, and Voyager ends up, hail them, what's going on? And they get this alien who basically barks at them, you will not take our young, you will not hurt our people, blah blah blah, and just shuts it off and immediately starts shooting at them. Now here's the interesting catch about this. As they're getting hit, Tuva comes up and says, Captain, they're hitting us with blah 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 weapons. They're not really making an appreciable effect on their shields. I don't think they're made for combat with an enemy race that has shield technology. These would probably be doing a great deal of damage to our hull, but they're not hitting our hull. And so Janeway's like, okay, we need to get some way to get them talking. We need to get them to understand. And by the way, if you caught it, the point here is that they shouldn't lower their shields while they're being attacked, so they can't get the away team back either. Not a huge deal, just something that'll come up briefly. Now, their Voyager is in kind of a. I've mentioned. I'm sorry, I didn't mention this. The episode would mention this earlier. Voyager is in kind of a power save mode for all intents and purposes. So only systems that are actively being used are actually drawing power right now. Make sense? So they kind of get blindsided when an actual bandit raider shows up, having detected the battle and happened to be in the vicinity, and starts going after Voyager and the other ship and the nursery, and they start making runs on the comet. And the crew over there is like, oh my god, what am I going to do? And they try to figure out what they do, and they try to actually kind of jury rig some kind of system to get the shields up, which fails, by the way. And then it cuts back to Voyager, and Voyager's like, we need to take that ship out. Phaser energy would be ridiculously expensive right now. Do we have any torpedoes? And if you've been paying attention to my edition, this is actually the second time total that they've used torpedoes, and they haven't replenished them since. So Janeway, that would be a pause moment. We could use our torpedoes, and Janeway would be like, and it would only have to be like a second of hesitation, a second of pause, and then do it. Hit them, Meanwhile, over on the thing, the damage has caused one of the energy supply conduits to to erupt, and Neelix is like, oh my god, we need to do something about this, and they go and B'Elanna tries to fix it or something like that, just a little bit of extra intrigue and drama there, and also helps to elevate the point I'm getting to here. And so they do fire one of their precious torpedoes. It basically disables the heck out of the pirate ship, but the pirate ship isn't backing down. And the other ship, which is now heavily damaged at this point, the Orosol ship, attacks the bandit ship, destroys it, stops the threat, and then hails Voyager. And Voyager's like, on the screen, and is like, I'm sure you can picture how this would go. You've saved our young. I thought you were here to steal them. And Jen was like, no, let us explain, please. And I says, I'm listening. We had no intention. We had no understanding of what we had encountered. we didn't realize we were actually on our way out. We were about to leave when you came and attacked us. If we can retrieve our crewmen." And then they contact the crewman, and the crewman explained to her on the comm badge, which the captain on the other ship can hear, "We've repaired, this power conduit near the thing," and blah blah blah. And the guy would understand and real, and he could just show that. Just doesn't have to say anything. Just a visual recommendation of, just something on his expression to show that he understands that they not only saved them by taking out the bandits, but also saved the young. And at that point, Voyager's like, we will leave you in peace. We're very sorry. And then the guy says, "Well, hold on. You have helped save our young and given us the situation. Is there anything we can do to offer you in return?" And Janeway says, "Well, normally I wouldn't ask, but we're having severe power issues right now." And he's like, "Well, we don't have, blah 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 blah, but we do have these things." And the two would coordinate, and it would get to the point where basically the Voyager crew would agree to send several of its engineers over to the comet to help mask it even further. Make sure nobody could see these energy signatures, and set up some primitive defenses just in case, just in case someone happens to wander by, and improve its own alert system. Granted, it was pretty fast. It only took a matter of hours for the alert to go off to, them actually warping in. But you get the point. And in return, they find out that these Orisol people have a surplus of a resource that they could use: dilithium. Now, they don't use dilithium for the same reason, but dilithium as an energy source is not exactly a new idea anyways, and so it's not uncommon, I would think, for them to use it in another manner other than the matter-antimatter ratio thing, in order to process it for energy or whatever. And so they offer to, give the dilithium, give a portion of dilithium to the to the crew, to Voyager, which helps solve their energy problem for now. And they end the episode on significantly higher spirits, is kind of what I'm getting at, rather than... Admittedly, some of my episodes end on kind of a bad point, but this one would end on a fairly good point, all things considered. And I think that's basically it. Kind of a short changes version, I admit, kind of a short Arshan Gaia edition. There will be one more episode which will take place within this little expanse area. That would be Persistence of Vision, the next one, which I'm going to rewrite almost completely because... well, if you've seen the episode, you know why. And then we get to Tattoo. Now, I've actually planned for Tattoo for quite a while, believe it or not. I'm going to leave my thoughts about that for when I get there. But anyways, for now, I'm going to go rest and get some sleep. I hope I will talk to you guys later.